think there's a lot of empty promises. They keep saying, hang on, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. But it's not getting any better, and here is summertime when Americans are driving all around the country with $5 gas prices. Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to a special quick-fire Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Wednesday episode.
WTF Wednesday.
Where I'm going to give you my interview that I just finished with Connell McShane here over at News Nation. If you don't watch me, I'm on there every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I'm going to give you that interview in a second where we talk about the president's bizarre cabinet meeting, the latest on Ukraine, whether he's surrounded by yes men and yes women, and the Knicks. Trump is talking about going to Madison Square Garden. Yes, people, it's definitely a What the Fuck Wednesday, a special episode of Independent Americans coming up right now. Please subscribe everywhere you listen and watch, and especially on Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Wednesday. Stay vigilant.
Anna Brand is at the White House for us, and Paul Rieckhoff is here with me in New York. Paul, of course, the host of the Independent Americans podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, every day of the week, right? The Independent Americans
It
podcast.
is. There's a lot to talk about.
You think? So the president's main point, Hannah went through some of this, the strait's going to be open. Nobody's going to control it. Actually threatened to blow up Oman at one point if they get out of line. So we had that, but we're still not there. So how did we get there?
Worst ceasefire ever?
Right.
And they still keep calling it a ceasefire, but then there were strikes over the weekend. I think we're just stuck in this place where it's the spin machines are at full tilt, and the reality is set in that the strait is still not clear. Gas prices are still up, and there's no peace in the region. And you've got the regime in Iran spinning, you've got Trump spinning, and the rest of the world is stuck somewhere in between. So I don't consider it a ceasefire until they actually stop shooting at things,
Right.
which hasn't happened.
No.
And until we start to see gas prices come down, it's a lot of political spin. I think there's a lot of empty promises. They keep saying, hang on, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. But it's not getting any better, and here is summertime when Americans are driving all around the country with $5 gas prices.
Yeah, to that point, and Hannah's point on the priority about rising gas prices and whether that resonates with Americans, here's how the president did handle the question today. Take a listen.
Prime urgency is that we can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. But at the same time, we have a tremendous amount of oil, gas, coal. We have tremendous amounts of energy. We're blessed with something very special. Those prices are going to come down. They're going to come down fast.
Well, I mean, that's an open question. I mean, the price of oil has come down to about 90, still well above pre-war levels, but that's one of the questions in all of this. At some point, it'll be over, and that'll be the political question for this president, how fast those prices come down.
Yeah, will it be over before the midterms? Because he keeps saying it's going to be over, and it's not over. And I think there's another thing that's happening here. He doesn't seem to be really upset about it. He doesn't seem to have an urgency that the country has. You know, Memorial Day weekend, I was driving. A lot of folks are driving around this country. You saw gas prices. You saw less cars on the road. You saw people trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And this is just the start of the summer. So people are already adjusting their plans. They can't fly as much as they might otherwise. And it's impacting them. And I think they want to see the president with more urgency. He keeps talking about enriched uranium. That's understandable. But he has to talk about what we're feeling back here. And inflation, gas prices, diesel prices as well, is what I think people want to see more urgency around.
Well, you know, I think you might be right that there's not urgency. And I wonder how much of that is on purpose from this president politically. I mean, as an aside today, at one point, he did say, and Hannah talked about this, you know, I don't really care about the midterms, because he was talking about Iran. So I care about making sure they don't have a weapon and all this. I don't really care about the midterms. You know, if you look like at Texas and all these other places, you know, that might be true. He might not care about the midterms.
I think that's right.
Which is strange, right? You know, when you think about it, but it might be true.
It is strange, but I do think it's a fact. I mean, he doesn't seem to care about polls. Otherwise, he wouldn't have hit Iran. He wouldn't have hit Venezuela. He wouldn't have put the tariffs in place. And he doesn't seem to care about the impact on the midterms, except for the candidates he's supporting. And I think what you're seeing is...
But they're less likely to win, theoretically. I mean, they may win, but like, you know, if I'm a Republican, I'd rather have Cornyn than Paxton. And, you know, Cassidy was a successful senator. You know, so it's not like he's calculating and saying, well, we got to hold on to this many seats. To your point, he's just picking who he likes.
Yeah, and I think he doesn't really care what Congress says.
Right.
You know, even if it changes over, I think he's still going to go all gas and no brakes. I mean, if Congress changes over, can they stop the war in Iran? I doubt it. Can they reverse the tariffs? Maybe. Can they stop him from hitting Cuba? Probably not. I think he's going to keep going and look at them in the rearview mirror and challenge them to stop him. And I think he's on a roll. I mean, Texas last night is another example of a win. You know, Louisiana, Indiana. He just keeps winning. And I think the Democrats...
Well, in his own party.
In his own party.
But his popularity's going down to new lows. I mean, he's about as popular as he was on January 6th. You know?
Yeah, but I think, for example...
in his own party, he's very powerful.
And in Texas, I think the Democrats are feeling themselves right now. They think Tellerico is the second coming. They always lose in Texas. Yes. They haven't won in Texas since 1988. Texas, you know, Tellerico's kind of like the new Beto O'Rourke. We've seen this before. And in the end, Republicans come back to the Republicans, and independents tend to go back to the Republicans. That's a very, very hard place for Republicans to win. And I think Trump is betting on that as well. His brand is low, but the Democrats are even lower, especially in places like Texas.
No, that's true. And, you know, there have been a lot of head fakes there. A lot of, oh, now this is the year. Beto and other people. One more thing on the cabinet meeting. The New York Times did a kind of a deep dive on this, but it is interesting. You know, cabinets as advisors to the president versus people who are praising the president over and over again. Here's some of the cabinet members and their, well, flattering comments for for their leader. This is how it goes at each meeting. Take a listen.
A lot of things we do that the media pays attention to, and a lot of things that the president empowers the department to do on behalf of the American people that he deserves great credit for.
You have made us a nation of builders again. You're leading us to the greatest economy that the world has ever known.
It speaks to the strength of your leadership. Pro-growth policies are creating conditions for American families and businesses to prosper.
Okay, so what's the serious question here? To me, the serious question is this president... Does he have anyone that says, no, not a good idea, we should do this? Or is it all a bunch of yes men and women surrounding that?
Yeah, it's a sycophant circle. I mean,
does that serve any president?
Well, it looks like a good press conference. Right. If you want to show like unanimity and you want to show everybody agrees with you, I mean, that's the most positive audience he ever has. The bunch of people who work for him. I think any CEO could create that environment if you had all the people that work for you who you could fire and said, say nice things about me. That's what he does. But I think it's really bizarre, and it's not great for our democracy, especially when you want a diversity of views on issues like attacking Iran, on nukes, on how to deal with the border. It seems like...
Well, think about like small business even. Like Kelly Loeffler's in charge of small business. Okay, we had a story, I think it was last week, about how the small business profitability is down huge. And she gets up today and says, all the small business owners, every time I meet them, they say how much better it is and how great it is and all this kind of thing. When we know the numbers, and small business owners, I think, would tell you this if you talk to them, a lot of them, that it's not as great as that, you know, and if that's all the president's hearing, is it serving him?
I think it's serving his ego and it's serving his agenda, but I don't think it's necessarily serving the American people. And what I do think it's doing is distancing himself further from the American people. And people are very concerned about corruption. They're worried about insider trading. They're worried about people making bets on the poly market on when we hit Iran. And when you see a bunch of people who seem exactly on the same page and exactly on his team, it compounds that. And these don't look like a bunch of people who are concerned about gas prices. They don't look like a bunch of people who know what it's like to buy a gallon of milk.
Yeah.
I think that is going to really hurt other Republicans, especially in congressional races, where his brand is still going to be hovering over, and they're not going to have him personally necessarily to lean in and push in a lot of money.
Yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic, and we see it in every single cabinet meeting. All right, one other thing before you go, different subject. Talked a lot about Iran. You even mentioned how Cuba might be next, but Ukraine, have the map on the telestrator here that we haven't talked as much about lately. What's happening in Ukraine? Interesting, in this Reuters interview, one of the key commanders for the Ukrainian side made this case. All right, we're at a turning point. Next 6 months are key, and it might be turning for real against the Russians. What do you think?
I think that's right. I mean, Ukraine has got momentum. Ukraine continues to hold the lines. The Russians are not advancing, and the Ukrainians have been able to hold on despite the low level of American support, and now they're hitting inside of Russia. We haven't seen Putin in a while. He's canceling parades. It looks like this is a summer where Ukraine can really take the advantage, and it may be a summer where Putin is really desperate. So he might lash out. He might try to open up a new front.
Well, this idea about expanding into Europe, which was a concern at the start of the war, has come up again.
Yes, I mean, the thing Putin also wants to do is keep Trump out of it. And so far, he's been able to do that. But Europe has leaned in. They've increased the arms production. And the Ukrainians are just fighting like hell and innovating. And they are the most battle-tested military in the world. And they continue to hold the lines. And I think that's what's really important. If they're holding the lines, they're winning against the Russian bear and Putin and all of that. If they can hold those lines, they're winning. And they may even be able to turn the tide this summer.
That's, we learned a lot about the drones from them, that's for sure. But you think they can turn the tide in terms of hold the battle front, the lines where they are now, front lines, and that's the win.
I do, and I think there's another thing.
It's not getting Russia completely out.
No, but there's something they can do this summer that's really important. They can disrupt life in Russia, right? Right? Like Ukraine's life has been disrupted every day. They're losing people. They know what it's like to have civilian sites bombed. The Russians have been pretty insulated from that.
Yeah.
But now the Ukrainians are hitting oil refineries inside of Moscow. They're making it hurt behind lines, and that will be different. If the people in Russia start to feel it and put pressure on Putin, that's a big turning point for the people of Ukraine.
All right. Big Nick fan. Do you hear the press? I heard a rumor this could be you, Spike Lee, Mayor Mamdani, and President Trump. Is that true?
Let's all hold hands outside and stay away from the Knicks and just let the Knicks keep on winning.
President's going, he said.
Please, just stay away. Stay away from Jackson Dart. Stay away from every sports team, and let's just let the winners win.
The Giants quarterback, too. Thanks, Paul. Paul Rieckhoff, Knicks fan, world analyst, whatever, podcast host every day. He does it all, this guy.
He tells me the left and right are dreams for those without a clue. And when you wake, it's time to grow. And it's not cool to believe in school, but if I can say one thing, I've seen the children of the revolution and the good trouble they can bring. He says the red and blue identity, independent is an attitude. An island in the sea of rhetoric and archipelago. He tells me the left and right are dreams for those without a clue. And when you wait, it's time to grow.
Powered by Righteous Media.